We're back in Long Beach, California.
You leave today and enter the world of Randomland.
Long Beach, the third wonder of America. It is full of all kinds of interesting things and places and people. Even I lived here for a little while, but maybe the biggest thing of all, and possibly the crown jewel, is this. The Queen Mary. Now this big old gal serves many purposes. In addition to being a sweet boat plucked from the pages of history, she also houses a restaurant, a luxury hotel, all kinds of shops, an event venue, and she's been used as a filming location. Filming Randomland. Ever heard of it? And if all that weren't enough, she was once, technically, a Disneyland attraction. What, you guys don't remember the time that Disney owned a 1930s luxury cruise liner? Well, I got your back. Let's see if we can fill you in on the details. Even larger than the Titanic and built to be the classiest ship of her day, the Queen Mary actually has a pretty fascinating history all of her own. It was the heyday of oceanic travel. The only way really to get from Europe to America was to go back and forth across the Atlantic Ocean. So the more people you could fit in one of these boats, the more money you could make. And the fancier and fancier the boats became. So construction began on the fanciest, biggest boat of them all, the Queen Mary, in 1930. Well, it was along about that time that a little snag in the form of the Great Depression came along and kind of screwed up their plans. This was a long time before Kickstarter, folks. So what did they do? They went to the King of England himself and got a little scratch. By 1934, this 81-ton marvel was ready to head for open water. Just one problem. What to name her? Now, during construction, this boat was known as Hull number 534, and even though that's pretty much the perfect name for any boat, the Cunard line that owned her had their hearts set because she was the world's greatest ocean liner on naming her after Britain's greatest queen, Queen Victoria. There was just one little hiccup with their plan. When the Cunard line approached King Edward V, who had given them the money to complete the ship, with the idea of naming the boat after Britain's greatest queen, he was pretty stoked. Yes, that's a fantastic idea. Of course we should name the boat after my wife, Queen Mary. Yes, Your Majesty. Precisely. Britain's greatest queen. Queen Mary. The name being agreed upon, the Queen Mary was finally christened and made her maiden voyage in 1936, and for many, many years was considered the world's finest, most luxurious ocean liner. And you can see why. Look at this. It's so fancy. Look, they even have chairs. I'm never leaving. Back in her day, she even set speed records, making the Kessel Run in less than 12 parsecs. I know it's hard to believe because she's so huge, but judge her by her size, do you? This big beauty was truly a modern marvel at the time, kind of also a bridge between the old world Titanic-y type of ship and the new Art Deco style. It's no wonder that everybody and their mother and this guy wanted to be aboard. Now this ship transported Hollywood royalty like Bob Hope, Clark Gable, even Walt Disney, but it also transported real royalty, the Duke and Duchess of Windsor, and legends of history like Winston Churchill. As with all great wonders of technology, eventually the Queen Mary became outdated, and after 31 years of sailing the high seas and doing her duty in World War II and whatnot, she came to rest here in Long Beach, California after her final voyage in 1967. Now safely home in Long Beach, all kinds of businesses tried to open and operate on board the Queen Mary in those groovy 1970s. Jacques Cousteau, the Hyatt Corporation, tons of others, but none of them were particularly successful, and they all more or less fizzled out by the early 1980s. And just when it seemed like the Queen Mary was going to be empty forever and maybe rust away into the ocean, a man by the name of Jack Rather came along and signed a 66-year lease with the city of Long Beach to operate the Queen Mary. Now, if the name Jack Rather sounds familiar to you, you've been doing your homework. Not only was he a close personal friend of Walt Disney's, but he's also the Hollywood legend who designed, constructed, opened, and owned the Disneyland Hotel. You see, by the time Disneyland opened up, Walt had put every last penny he had into the parks themselves. There was no money left over to build a hotel. So his buddy Jack Rather came along and said, "I'll build your hotel, Pilgrim. Just let me use the name Disneyland." No problem, right? Well, of course it's no problem when Walt Disney and Jack Rather are professional homeboys, but you see, Walt Disney passed away in 1966, And by the time Jack Rather died in 1988, let's just say the Disney company was pretty happy to get their hands on Jack Rather's company and the Disneyland Hotel. What no one was really thinking about, though, is that along with Jack Rather's company came the lease on the Queen Mary. Now, unexpected or not, that officially made this gigantic boat a part of the Disney franchise, and Disney rose to the occasion, giving the Queen Mary a hull of a facelift and preparing her for a new, gigantic promotion, the Voyage to 1939. Capturing the spirit of the Queen Mary's last voyage before becoming a World War II vessel, Disney themed the boat around all things 1939. There were period actors in costumes roaming the ship and interacting with guests, big band swing music playing through the speakers, and probably some other old-timey stuff as well. Now listen, y'all, hold on to your butts. I got big plans for the weekend. We going down to the Queen Mary. We're going to pretend like it's the 1930s. Sweet! Now the good news was that the Queen Mary was restored to her former glory. Disneyland even offered free admission to the Queen Mary when you bought a ticket to the park. But the bad news is, it was never all that popular with Disneyland guests. Hey kids, I know we said we were going to spend 2 days at the park, but it turns out we got some free tickets. You a big fan of decommissioned warships from the 1930s? Now, as amazing of a guest experience as Disney had created here, and as much work and attention to detail as they had put into the Queen Mary herself, at the end of the day, they were really only operating the vessel because they'd inherited the lease from the Jack Rather Corporation. It wasn't really their first priority, so when the option came up in 1993 to drop the lease and pass it on to someone else, Disney took it. So once again, for a time, the Queen Mary sat empty and alone. And you know what? With a 60-year-old vessel made of steel and fine woods, sitting in salt water with no one around to take care of her, it doesn't take long before a little bit of deterioration sets in and makes the ship a little bit less than desirable to visit. Luckily, the end of Disney's lease did not spell the sinking of the Queen Mary. As a matter of fact, she's still perfectly fine and afloat to this very day, operating as a very classy hotel and a pretty amazing event center. Actually, had one of my high school proms on board this very vessel, and there was a lot of smooching going on. Too bad none of it was for me. Now, because we've done so many Disneyland videos together and explored abandoned attractions and secrets of the theme parks, and we've also delved a lot into the history of Walt Disney himself on this channel, we focused a little hard on the almost forgotten Disney connection to the Queen Mary today. But you know what? The Queen Mary is absolutely fascinating. It is a massive boat. I have spent all day on this boat and haven't even begun to see all that there is to see. So we're definitely going to have to come back and delve a little bit more into the secrets, the history, and maybe even some of the creepy ghost stuff of the Queen Mary. But as for today, it's time for us to set sail. Make sure to subscribe to this channel for some more crazy adventures. Check out our website, livefastride.com, and I'll see you guys in Randomland. Bye-bye!
The Queen Mary is an international historical treasure. You really can't even build ships out of the same materials anymore as this one is built. She is fitted with 56 different species of rare woods sewn from all over the British Empire. Exotic names like Betula, Avedire, cedar moss. Cedar moss is a wood that only occurs naturally every 175 years when cedar and mahogany trees cross-pollinate. The very metals in the ship, silver, bronze. This was a ship of state. The very finest artists were used to decorate the interiors. There were more than 30 artists used to fit out the interiors of the Queens. Literally, the finest materials that could be had at the time were used to create the ship. She's created out of 35,000 tons of high tensile steel. She's held together with 10 million rivets, one of the largest riveted structures left in the world today, and the only superliner left of the glorious age of golden travel, the golden age of travel. You'll never see anything like this today. There are ships. The Cunard line operates 3 magnificent ships today, but they are modern builds, and though beautiful, they will never have the history, I don't think, or the charisma that lay within these decks.
Oh, dang it, we're getting bonuses.